Everything that has value has a price tag with it. However, that does not mean that everything is valued the same. Ranked modes in video games provide us with a somewhat accurate idea of how we play compared to those within the same region. This title or rank that's given to you naturally holds value, though that value is determined not only by the user, but by the community as well. For instance, most people in CSGO will discount you for being in the silver ranks, regardless of the fact that you may hit your shots, make excellent callouts, and work well under pressure. On the opposite end of that spectrum, it could be like the Rainbow Six Siege community, where if you make it to the rank of Platinum 3, you are generally regarded as a player that can hold their own and be trusted to be reliable and efficient in completing basic push and tactics. I couldn't give a straight face on that one. At least that's how the general community regards it as. Once you actually get to Plat, you realize that it's just a different color of gold you have to play with. However, that rank you have is a representation of you, and thus it holds value. In most cases, this value equates to time, and not necessarily time just in that one game you're playing. In the last video, we discussed how one of the key pieces of me understanding the fundamentals of Valorant was not due to me playing Valorant before, but more the fact that I had a base understanding of first-person shooters from other games, in particular Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Time is the most valuable thing you can spend on any task, and it should be treated as such. This brings me to the topic of today's video: what to gain when you can't lose. Before we hop into Unrated to complete the 20 matches required of you to play ranked, we will explore the practice range. This area of the game is where you start when you open the game for the first time to complete the tutorial. Even if it's not your first time, there is an intrinsic value this area holds that you can take advantage of. We will be revisiting this area quite a bit during our journey, so you might want to become familiar with your surroundings. There are several areas for you to take advantage of to warm up your aim, rehearse, and fine-tune your basic mechanics before entering your matches. We'll select the shooting test area to start with. The big focus on this area for us is the familiarization with different weapons and getting down your sensitivity, as well as some other details. Now, most of this section will depend on personal preference, with some data to back up certain things. For instance, to start, I'm going to practice using the Vandal, which is an automatic rifle in the game. The benefit of using this weapon is that it one-shot headshots at every range, meaning that if you're good at clicking heads, you'll get a good number of kills with this weapon. There are some caveats to that though. The Phantom, an equally priced automatic rifle, cannot always one-shot headshot. Still, the trade-offs you get are easier to manage recoil and its suppressor that doesn't allow enemies to see where the bullets are coming from as quickly. Now, some will argue that having the one-tap headshot potential outclasses the Phantom in every way, and some will then counter that point with the fact that the Phantom is used more amongst the professionals currently than the Vandal, so surely they should know better. This is my argument. It doesn't matter. Throughout your time in Valorant, as well as any shooter, you'll realize that what the pros are doing isn't necessarily the end-all be-all for every situation. You are not a pro, and that's why there's a difference between the professional scene and the ranked scene. They don't always follow the same metas, they don't always follow the same trends. As a professional, you should be able to adapt and innovate as needed with a coordinated team behind you. We don't have such luxuries, such as having a team that is coordinated and practices and experiments daily, so the rules generally don't apply here. The fact of the matter is, if you're fragging out using an operator or fragging out using a judge, the critical part is that you're fragging out, not that you're using what people tell you you should use. Of course, different weapons are better in different situations, no one's arguing that. But as you're starting off to learn, don't be afraid to use what feels comfortable to experiment further outside your comfort zone at a pace that you can handle. Not everyone is the same, and you should take the time necessary for you to learn what situations call for what weapons. Here, you should also look at your sensitivity, which the game allows you to adjust in major and minor increments as necessary for you. One way to find a good sensitivity for you is to start inside of the bot's spawn area, look straight ahead with your mouse at the most left side of your mouse pad, and then go all the way to the right, at least the areas that you use of your mouse pad. Theoretically, you should be able to turn 180 degrees. If you find yourself undershooting or more commonly overshooting, I recommend adjusting your sensitivity settings until you achieve that result. This might make you have to use your arm to aim rather than your wrist, and if that's a new sensation for you, don't be worried. That's quite common and already a massive step in the right direction to becoming better at aiming. There are exceptions to this rule, of course. Even if you take a look at the pros, there are some that play with their wrists and faster sensitivities. However, these should be regarded as exceptions and not the general rule. Using your arm instead of your wrist will provide you better control in the long run and save your hand from being overstrained after long periods of gameplay. Another way that you can see if you are overshooting or undershooting is just by flicking to different bots and notice if you are going too far past them or maybe you're not going far enough to actually be able to hit your target. Based on that information, you can adjust your sensitivity as needed. This will make it more natural and easier for you to get into the habit of training with this sensitivity. Now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead with the next subjective item on the list, your crosshair. On the screen now are the settings I use for my crosshair currently. You can also find these settings in the description below. This is another one of those subjective things to adjust throughout your time playing Valorant until you find something that suits your style the most. And even then, you might wind up changing it. To explain my crosshair quickly to you and certain reasons behind it, I don't use firing error or movement error because I don't care for what feels like an inconsistent crosshair. However, it could work for you to get used to how the recoil resets in-game based on movement and firing. We'll cover that in a second. I have the outer lines turned on and maxed out. The reason behind this is that when firing the Phantom and the Vandal, two of the most popular weapons in the game, the top line will indicate roughly the top part of the weapon's recoil pattern, which is helpful during prolonged engagements. Lastly, my color preferences switch between pink or magenta and cyan. The reasoning behind this is that in comparison to other color options, pink and cyan are usually the least prominent colors in a majority of shooters, and naturally will provide a contrast to the background, allowing you to see your crosshair at all times and not lose it while you're in the game. This all being said, remember, your crosshair is for you. So, whatever works. When at the shooting practice, you can set the bots up how you'd like, be that strafing, standing still, with or without armor, and the difficulty, which changes other factors, such as the amount of moving you'll have to do to kill the bots, or their strafing difficulty. Use this time to familiarize yourself with the proportions of hitboxes. These bots represent the player model of every character in the game. Every character has the same player model to ensure a balanced playing field and consistency. Another thing you should notice is that whether or not the bot is close or far, the head hitbox is generally in the same spot. This will be important when we cover crosshair placement in a later video. But it's good for you to have an understanding of generally where your crosshair should be at all times. Moving on to the area right next to the firing range, we see a target that can change distances and a dummy to the right of it. The best part about the dummy's position in this section is the ability to hone in on your counter strafing.
Hey Blacksmith, what is counter strafing?
I'm glad you asked, little guy. Counter strafing is where you go the opposite direction of the way you were going to reset your movement penalty before firing your weapon. You see, in Valorant, there's movement penalty and firing penalties that apply accordingly to affect your recoil. Firing penalty is increasingly applied the longer or faster you fire your weapon, automatic or not. Movement penalty works similarly, except it's based on, well, you guessed it, your movement. And that is a huge challenge for a lot of people, I notice. coming from other first-person shooters such as Rainbow Six and Call of Duty, where movement and firing your weapon are key elements to being able to play the game effectively, it's kind of odd to switch gears and realize that you have to slow down in order to fire your weapon more accurately. Now, if you hold shift to walk, your movement penalty is far less and usually still gives you first shot accuracy. This is important because many engagements in the game can be won immediately or quicker if you can hit a headshot on your first shot, and moving can be a big deterrent to that. However, the issue with shift walking around a corner is that you're slow and become an easier target for your enemy to acknowledge and react to. This is where counter-strafing comes in. If I hold the A key when peeking a corner, I will want to make sure that I hit the D key to counter the input of the A key and counter my movement immediately before taking the shot. This works vice versa with moving to the right and countering your movement by switching directions. To make things simple, if you're going to the left, you'll want to make sure that you input the key that makes you go to the right for a split second to completely stop your character dead in its tracks prior to taking a shot. This will remove the movement penalty that you receive in game.
What happened?
I just fucking botted. I just walked around and just started firing and took so many shots. I almost died. The reason is that in Valorant, you have deceleration when you stop moving without counter-strafing. This deceleration is still acknowledged as movement by the game and thus gives you movement penalty, which will affect your recoil. To practice this crucial skill, we'll practice on Steve here. Because Steve is standing still, we know where he'll be. Using that to our advantage, we'll start behind this wall and move out to shoot him. Start by speaking out loud what keys you're pressing to do what you're saying out loud. A, D, shoot. A, D, shoot. Take it slow and build up speed, and then you won't have to say it out loud either. Keep at it until you can give consistent results at a pace that you feel comfortable with. The next area is excellent for you to start rehearsing some reaction and flick shots, or just in general. Switching between close and far targets at more extreme values while keeping a steady flow, something we'll go more in depth with on future episodes. Now that this is taken care of, let's head through the teleporter. On the other side, there will be two areas we'll learn on: defusing the spike and planting the spike. Start by setting the bot's difficulty, and I would recommend turning off infinite ammo, as you won't be able to utilize this in-game, obviously. The bot difficulty you set should be a challenge for you, but not difficult to the point that gets you frustrated. This area is great not only for practicing some of the techniques you rehearsed in the first range, but also for understanding how you can use your character's abilities to clear out the point for you to plant or defuse the spike. You will more than likely fail a couple times trying to beat these areas, but that's okay. Take a step back and try to figure out what happened. Did you not counter strafe? Did you miss an angle you didn't know was there? Did you misuse an ability? Or maybe you're having a hard time controlling your weapon's recoil pattern. For the most part, almost everything you encounter in this area can point you in a better direction as to what your weaknesses are and how to improve on them. I would recommend experimenting with every agent in the game, seeing as they are unlocked in the practice range, so you not only understand how to play as the agent and learn some of the fun combos they can perform when it comes time to, but also how to play against these agents as well. Every agent has their own set of unique abilities, some that you might even find out accidentally. Once you're popping heads, moving smoothly, using your abilities correctly, and teaching those bots who their daddy is.
Oh, I'm gonna enjoy this.
Pistachio, it is demoralizing to your opponent to repeat the phrase, "Who's your daddy?"
Yes. Who's your daddy?
Steve.
Who's your daddy? Having fun now?
Steve.
You're ready for real players, which, if I'm being honest with you, they might be easier than the bots in some situations. That's going to be it for this episode. In the next episode, we'll start tackling unrated and what you should be looking out for in this game mode. My name is Blacksmith, and until next time, stay fuzzy.